Hello, and welcome to our online tutorial on preparing fixed broadband availability data for the Commission's new Broadband Data Collection, or BDC. I'm Kirk Berge, counsel to the Broadband Data Task Force at the FCC. This tutorial will help facilities-based providers of fixed broadband service format their broadband availability data submissions for filing in the BDC. We're also making available two companion tutorial videos, the first of which provides more in-depth information about the broadband serviceable location fabric. The second describes the supporting data that terrestrial fixed wireless providers are required to submit if they choose to submit polygon data, which includes propagation model details, link budget parameters, and clutter data. The FCC's maps will play a critical role in the efforts of federal, state, local, and tribal governments to assure that essential broadband services are made available to locations throughout the United States, and that funding is carefully targeted to the areas most in need. Timely and accurate data from all providers is therefore of paramount importance. We know that the filing will entail considerable effort by providers and have therefore already released detailed specifications and online help articles for the collection. This tutorial and the two others complement those materials, and together are designed to assist filers of fixed broadband availability data with preparing their data and improving the FCC's data on broadband availability throughout the United States. You can find additional information and resources on the BDC by visiting fcc.gov/broadbanddata. The website will be updated with additional resources as we approach the filing window, and I encourage you to refer to it often as you prepare. Thanks for taking the time to watch this tutorial and for your efforts to be prepared to submit broadband availability data as of June 30th. I'll now turn it over to Michael Ray, an attorney advisor in the WIRELINE Competition Bureau, to get started. Mike?
Thank you, Kirk. In this video, we'll go over the following. First, how to prepare fixed broadband availability data for the broadband data collection, including the two ways to generate your availability information. Second, how to report the technology, latency, and speed of a service. Third, the maximum buffer requirements. Fourth, parameters for fixed wireless propagation modeling. And fifth, how to format location lists and polygon data. Facilities-based providers of fixed broadband service must identify the locations or areas where they have actually built out their broadband network infrastructure and to which they either currently provide service or could perform a standard broadband installation. There's a lot to unpack in that one sentence. We'll define a standard broadband installation in a minute, but the first thing to know is that there are two ways fixed broadband providers can document their service area to meet this requirement. First, providers can file a location list. This is a list of the locations where the provider has a broadband internet access connection in service or could provide one with a standard installation. This list of locations must be in a tabular CSV format, and the location must be based on the FCC's broadband serviceable location fabric. Second, providers can file coverage polygons. A coverage polygon, or polygons, must represent the area where the provider has broadband internet access connections in service or could provide them. The coverage polygon must be in one of the GIS formats accepted by the broadband data collection system. These are an ESRI shapefile, an ESRI file GDB, a GeoJSON, or GeoPackage. Filers must submit all their fixed availability data in the same format. They may not submit some fixed availability data in one format and some in the other format. Governmental or third-party entities also may voluntarily submit verified data on the coverage of fixed broadband providers. Again, all availability data must be submitted in one of the formats mentioned previously. Providers must base their service availability footprints on the definitions and standards in the Broadband Data Act and FCC orders. The footprints should include only the broadband serviceable locations to which they have built out their broadband network infrastructure and either currently provide a broadband connection or could perform a standard broadband installation. A standard installation is the initiation by a provider of fixed broadband internet access service within 10 business days of a request in an area or to a location to which the provider has not previously offered that service, with no charges or delays attributable to the extension of the network of the provider. For locations or areas where service is available, filers must report the technology code, maximum download and upload speed, and the latency flag associated with the service offered. Technology codes are based on the particular technology used to provide service and must be one of the codes on this list. Filers should note that this list is a streamlined version of the technology codes that were used for filing availability data in FCC Form 477. In addition, we want to note that there are two technology codes for satellite service. Code 60 for geostationary satellite includes fixed non-terrestrial service offered using satellites in geostationary orbit, such as geostationary Earth orbit or GEO satellites. Code 61 for non-geostationary satellite includes fixed non-terrestrial service offered using satellites in non-geostationary orbit, such as low Earth orbit or medium Earth orbit, that is, LEO or MEO satellites. There are also two technology codes for terrestrial fixed wireless services. Code 70 is for fixed terrestrial wireless service using entirely unlicensed spectrum, including services provided over Wi-Fi as a fixed solution, or services using the CBRS band or 3.5 gigahertz spectrum on an entirely general authorized access GAA basis. Code 71 is for fixed terrestrial wireless service using entirely licensed spectrum or a hybrid of licensed and unlicensed spectrum, including services provided over a 4G LTE or 5G NR mobile network, but sold as a fixed solution. Services using the CBRS band or the 3.5 gigahertz spectrum band on a priority access license basis, or using a combination of PALs or GAAs, or services using licensed microwave, etc. The latency field notes whether the offered service is low latency, which is defined as having round-trip latency of less than or equal to 100 milliseconds, based on the 95th percentile of measurements. If the service is low latency, filers should enter a 1 for true. If it is not, they should enter a 0 for false. For each technology used to provide service in an area or to a location, filers must report the maximum download and upload speeds that they advertise for that service and technology. The system will reject a file if the value in this field is not an integer and does not meet the following requirements. It will not round or truncate decimals. If the highest speed service offered has an advertised download speed that is less than 25 megabits per second, or an advertised upload speed that is less than 3 megabits per second, but the download and/or upload speed is at least 200 kilobits per second, then the speed should be reported using one of two service tiers. First, if the maximum download speed is less than 10 megabits per second, or the upload speed is less than 1 megabit per second, enter 0 for both the download and upload speeds. The system will ask the filer to confirm that the service offered falls in this tier. Second, if the maximum download speed is greater than or equal to 10 megabits per second, and the paired upload speed is greater than or equal to 1 megabit per second, enter 10 for the download speed and 1 for the upload speed. The bottom line is that any service that does not advertise both a 25 megabit per second or greater download speed and a 3 megabit per second or greater upload speed should be reported as either 10.1 or 0.0. If the service offered has a maximum advertised download speed that is greater than or equal to 25 megabits per second and a maximum advertised upload speed that is greater than or equal to 3 megabits per second, then the filer should enter the values of the advertised download speed and the advertised upload speed in megabits per second as an integer. Providers of fixed wire broadband service must not exceed specific maximum buffer distances around their aggregation points when reporting service availability based on wired technologies. Buffer distances from the aggregation point to the served location are measured in route distance and therefore must reflect where providers have deployed their last mile distribution networks. A coverage area cannot be based on an aerial or, as the crow flies, radius around an aggregation point. Here are the specific maximum buffer sizes. For providers using digital subscriber line or DSL technologies, offering speeds at 25.3 megabits per second or greater, the maximum buffer is 6,600 root feet or 1.25 miles from the DSLAM or DSL access multiplexer to the covered premises. Providers offering a maximum speed less than 25.3 megabits per second will not be subject to this maximum buffer requirement, but their coverage areas must include only locations where they have a customer or could provide a standard broadband installation. For providers using hybrid fiber coax, that is HFC or cable technology, the maximum buffer is 12,000 root feet or 2.27 miles from the aggregation point to the customer premises. For providers using fiber to the premises, that is FTTP or fiber technologies, the maximum buffer is 196,000 root feet or 37 miles from the optical line terminal, the OLT, to the optical network termination, the ONT. For all fixed wire technologies, the buffer distance from the aggregation point shall include the drop distance. The drop distance is a maximum of 500 feet from a deployed line or distribution network infrastructure to the parcel boundary of a served location. Note that buffers are not substitutes for providers' own determination of the actual availability of its service. Instead, these buffers are maximum distances that wireline broadband service providers may not exceed in filing their availability data, except where a specific exception applies. In their availability reporting, filers should include locations outside of the prescribed buffers only under the following circumstances. First, the filer has served a current or former subscriber using the reported technology. Second, the locations are in an area in which the provider is receiving or has received universal service support to provide broadband service, or has other federal, state, or local obligations to make service available in the area, and the provider has begun to make service available in that area. Or third, the Commission has granted a waiver to exceed the buffers based on a specific showing by the provider. Fixed wireless providers that submit availability information in a coverage polygon, rather than as a list of locations, must base their coverage on propagation modeling. Fixed wireless providers must use the following parameters in their propagation modeling when generating their coverage. First, a minimum 75% cell edge probability. Second, a minimum 50% cell loading factor. And third, receiver heights within a range of 4 to 7 meters. You can learn more about the supporting data fixed wireless providers must submit in our companion video on fixed availability supporting data requirements. If a fixed broadband provider chooses to submit availability data using location lists, the file must consist of records of the broadband serviceable locations that the provider serves, either with a connection in service or which could be connected with a standard installation. The locations must match and conform to the locations in the FCC's broadband serviceable location fabric. The fabric will include a unique identifier, the geographic coordinates, and, where available, the address or addresses associated with each location, as well as other information about the location. We have made a preliminary version of the fabric available to providers to help them prepare their fixed availability data in advance of the filing window. Additional information about the preliminary version of the fabric is available at the online Broadband Data Collection Help Center. When filers submit data as a list of locations, they must include the location ID for each location, as well as information about the service offered at that location. Filers should not include in the data they upload information about the geographic coordinates or addresses of the location. The file with a list of locations must be uploaded in comma-separated value or CSV format and match the specifications in Section 6.1 of the Broadband Data Collection Data Specifications for Biannual Submission of Subscriptions, Availability, and Supporting Data, also referred to as the Data Specifications. If a provider offers service to a location using multiple technologies, a record with that location ID should be included in the file multiple times, but there should be only one record for each unique combination of location ID and technology. A record for each location ID should include, in addition to the technology code, fields for the brand name, maximum advertised download speed, maximum advertised upload speed, the latency flag, and business/residential category of the service offered at that location. A screenshot of sample data is shown here. If service is offered at different download and upload speeds using the same type of technology, then the filer should report only the highest speed offered. This should be based on the highest download speed advertised and the upload speed that is paired with that download speed. If a fixed broadband provider chooses to submit availability data as a coverage polygon, the data file must contain GIS compatible data with polygon geometries and associated attributes. Coverage polygons must encompass only the locations to which the provider either currently has a connection or could perform a standard broadband installation as defined earlier. When filers upload a polygon in the broadband data collection system, the system will display on a map the broadband serviceable locations from the fabric that overlap the polygon. Therefore, we encourage polygon filers to access and use the fabric to see which locations are overlapped by their coverage area polygon. Each polygon should represent a unique combination of the following fields: a provider ID, brand name, a technology, a max down, a max up, low latency, and a BizRes code. GIS data attributes specifications can be found in Section 6.21 of the data specifications. When a service provider reports multiple technologies, or when a governmental or third-party entity reports multiple technologies for an individual service provider, the coverage areas for the different technologies can overlap. However, coverage areas for the same technology cannot overlap. Again, if service is offered at different download and upload speeds using the same type of technology, then the filer should report only the highest speed offered. This should be based on the highest download speed advertised and the upload speed that is paired with that download speed. If service is offered at different maximum advertised speeds in different areas, then the filer must submit separate polygons representing the coverage areas of those different speeds, but the polygons cannot overlap. At a particular place using a particular technology, there can be only one maximum advertised speed. Providers may split each map up into multiple files, such as by state or market, when uploading their data, but the polygons for the same technology must not overlap. The FCC staff has established specific standards for the GIS data files to be submitted in the broadband data collection system. First, all files must contain valid GIS data in a supported file format. Second, for Esri shapefile or Esri file GDB, that is, file geodatabase data, the GIS data must be submitted as a single zip file. Third, GIS files must use the unprojected geographic WGS84, that is, EPSG 4326, coordinate reference system. Fourth, GIS files must contain well-formed 2D vector polygon data, according to the Open Geospatial Consortium, or OGC, rules. Fifth, GIS files must contain only closed non-overlapping polygons. And sixth, any variation in any of the required fields necessitates the creation of a separate polygon showing the relevant coverage. Each polygon must have a single value for each of the following fields: technology code, maximum advertised download speed, maximum advertised upload speed, low latency flag, and business residential code.
Thank you, Mike. This concludes our introduction to fixed availability filing. Thanks again for taking time to watch this tutorial and for your efforts to be ready to submit fixed broadband availability data as of June 30. If you've not already done so, we urge you to watch our 2 companion tutorials for an overview of the broadband serviceable location fabric and the supporting data that fixed providers are required to submit. And please remember to periodically check our website at fcc.gov/broadbanddata for links to commission orders, notices, tutorials, FAQs, and other resources. Questions about the BDC filing requirements may be submitted to the FCC by using the Submit a Request button on the Help Center from the link on that webpage. Thank you again for your efforts to prepare for the upcoming filing.